Hi everyone, Zach here, and welcome to lesson 47 in this series on developing a survival game. In this video, we will begin working on our resource spawner. This is a custom resource spawner using recursion. Now, what you can do with this spawner is very similar to what's built into the spawner for procedural generation given to us by Epic. However, we're going to be looking at how our code works, so how to understand how these spawners work. And by being able to make our own, we have more freedom to customize some of the components and remove the parts that we don't need or add in parts that we want. I'll go into a lot more detail in this on the introduction or the prep video that I do for this particular lesson. That said, this series has been brought to you by my Patreon sponsors. And with all of that said, fire up your projects and let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the editor. In the last video, I briefly mentioned towards the end I thought there was an issue with the landscape grass type. I've gone through it. They all are not using grid, so we are fine. That's the regular grass. None of them are using it. It was just happenstance that they randomly spawned there. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to start our procedural foliage generator, and we're just going to be creating a structure, mostly because we have a lot to do outside of the structure that's going to take quite some time. So what we will do first is delete this tree. Second, we're going to go to our survival core. We're going to start in our enums folder, oddly enough. And we're going to create a new blueprint enumeration. So E, and I'm going to call this resource spawner settings. And it's going to have 3 values. It keeps opening in the wrong window. And those will be ones we should be familiar with from the landscape foliage type or landscape grass type. Uniform, lock, if it'll let me type, lock XY, and free. Now, really quickly, just so we're aware, when we use the lock XY, it's going to default to the X value. Just so we have that in mind, let's save this. Let's go up to core again. Let's go to structures, and we're going to create a mini structure, so we just have it preset. We're going to recycle this structure throughout our work, and this will be called F spawner or resource spawner range. Right, we're doing a range with that, so I'm just going to call it range. And then we're going to open that up. And we're going to put 2 variables in, but they're going to be both of type float. So I'm just going to do the first one as float and then do a second variable. And this will be min, so our minimum for our range, and our max. Again, we're just going to recycle this over and over again because we can have structures nested within other structures. And then we're going to create our primary structure here. And this will be our F resource spawner details. Go ahead and open that up. And in this one, we're going to have a lot of material to go through or put into here. So first, we're going to have our resource. And you could do type actor. In fact, I think that's perfectly fine to have it as an actor class reference. But if we do it that way, we're getting really close to the other procedural spawner system we're going to look at. So we're going to make this one a bit non-agnostic, meaning that it relates to what we're doing. So we're going to use our resource master. We're going to get a class reference to it. And I'm just going to put a tooltip in. This is the resource that's being spawned in. We are then going to have a integer called density. Not really density, actually, because we don't do a calculation for density. It's the amount we're spawning in. That's really all it is. So the amount of resources spawned into our volume area. I guess it is density based on our volume area, but, you know. Yeah. After that, we are going to have B allow random amount. This is a Boolean. And it checks if a random amount is to be spawned in. In most cases, this is going to just be true, so we're going to default that to true. Because this will be our is spawned in check. If this is true, then it's spawned in. I'm giving you a bit of an option that I don't plan on ever using. Then we're going to do our amount to add. And this will be our first F resource spawner range. So, or actually we'll call this item amount so we keep the name similar to what's in our other one. And we'll set our min and max to 1. And I'm just going to make a note that it defaults to hang on, let me just type this in. So if random, the minimum is allowed to spawn, or the minimum allowed to spawn, and then our max is if random, or the min and max allowed to spawn. Sorry. Minimum and max allowed to spawn. If not random, defaults to max. Okay. There we go. It's a little bit different than my test file. I'm actually deviating a fair bit from my test file in this version. We're then going to have another Boolean called B is tree type. This will be a type Boolean, of course. And then we're going to do a couple more bools here. The first one will be, I'm going to give myself a bit of space here. Also, mark true if spawning trees, especially if using random rotation. Okay. After that, and I'm saying that because I know with the tree rotations versus the plant rotations, they're going to be vastly different. B use random rotation. After use random rotation, we're going to have our scaling settings. Actually, I guess we don't need that Boolean yet. So scaling settings, and this is going to be of our E resource spawner settings. And for this one, we're just going to make the note. Hang on, let me go back to the bool above here. So this will randomly rotate. We'll randomly rotate the resource as they are spawned in. Under our scaling settings, we're going to have our scale X, scale Y, and scale Z, which are all going to be of our our F resource spawner range. So scale X is our F resource spawner range. So we get that min and max down here again. And it determines the X scale when just using the, free. It determines the XY when using lock XY. All right. After that, we have our scale Y, which is of the same type. And this determines our Y scale. Determines Y scale in free. And this is where it gets a bit weird. We're going to use our scale Z for our uniform. And that's just because a lot of the times the Z score is the height kind of matters more. So actually, I'm not going to put that comment in. I might change my mind between videos on that. Then we're going to have a bunch of bools. In fact, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 booleans at this point. So I'm just going to create one, set it to bool. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So our booleans are B spawn on dirt, B spawn on grass, B, sorry, no, that's not right. I'm gonna paste that there. And it's actually the first one should be B spawn on all surfaces. And then this is B spawn on dirt, B spawn on grass, B spawn on mud. That should be a lowercase b. And we just fix that typo. Then it's B spawn on rock. And finally, B spawn on sand. We're not going to spawn anything on water, and we don't have a water physics material, so we don't have any of that to worry about. Wow, we're only 10 minutes in. Actually, let's keep going for a bit. So let's save these out, and let's create a new folder under actor, and this folder will be our spawner. And in fact, if we want to be a bit fair, we should move our grass foliage type into here from earlier, but we're not going to, or at least not yet. We're going to create a new blueprint of type actor, and this will be BP resource spawner. All right. The way this is going to work is we're going to start in our viewport. So let's pop it open, because I forgot to say that. Control S save. In our viewport, we're going to find a collision, box collision, and I'm going to name this my spawning volume. And I am going to override the default scenery with that. I'm going to compile real quick. I might add a billboard to this. I haven't decided. And a billboard just so we can see where we place it, and you can do billboard. It's just a little raptor head. I haven't really decided if that's what we're going to have quite yet or not. And we don't need to change any settings in our spawner volume. But what we do need to do is we need to create a couple of variables. And this will be our resource or resources detail or details. We're going to put this in a category called master. And this will be the structure we just created of F resource spawner details. We want an array of these, and this is something we want to be exposed, or it's something not exposed on spawn. We want this to be instance. We can edit this per instance. Yeah, I'm avoiding that word. And the reason for that is we just drag this out here for a moment. We have this array over here. We can now fill in this information. Now I'm going to delete this real quick. I just saw a small error I want to address. For our density, we are going to default our density out to 15. And I also saw another error here. There's a reason why I did this as two separate things, and I deviated in my prep file. So I'm going to create a new variable. It's going to be type integer, and it will be item amount min, because they can't be floats, and item amount max. And I'm going to very carefully move these up to the correct spot. So just going to get all the way up to our right here under item amount. And then I'm going to repeat this one and just wait till I get under the other light green sea foam sickish color tic tac. And then I'm going to delete that one there. And I'm going to pop these both open, and I'm just going to cheat and copy my min amount to add from the other one. So this is the minimum amount we're allowing to spawn in, and the other one is our maximum that will be spawned. So what I've done here is if random, the minimum amount of resources the instance is allowed to spawn, and same for our max. All right, I'm going to save that. Let's go back to our Control S save everything again, because we've updated the spawner. We open this up. We can then see, and again, we need to make one change. We need to default these both to 1. There we go. Save. Just going to compile this again and see if it's giving us the right thing. It is in this version. Compile, delete, compile again. Let's check the version out here. And 17 members, that looks better. Yep, there we go. Okay. So that is our default. Now, I am going to make a couple of more changes really quickly now that I'm looking at this a bit more closely. I'm going to open my mins and maxes and set them all to 1 so it has that default value stored there. All right, going to go ahead and save this one. And I think that's all the defaults we're going to have set up. So let's go back to our spawner, compile again, and let's just pop one of these in here. Take a look at our scale settings. Looks like we have everything we need, so we can delete that. And we are good to move forward. Okay, so that took 5 minutes to see the little bits of cleanup. Glad we did that in this video, I guess. And what we're going to do is go over to our event graph. And on here, we are going to get rid of, actually first, let's go to here. We don't need the actor to tick. There's no point for it to tick, at least not right now. We might want to put that back in if we want regrowing resources, but I don't plan to include that. So I'm going to get rid of the begin overlap and the tick. And then I am going to create a, first I'm going to create a checker. So what we want to do is we want to check spawner validity. If we have nothing to spawn in, we're going to have the spawner delete itself. So we're going to have a simple branch here. And all this branch is going to do is going to go, all right, is the last index of the resources we're trying to add, so last index, is it equal to or greater than 0? Because if it is not equal to 0 or greater than 0, in other words, it's -1, it's an invalid array, or it's an empty array. And if it's empty, well, we don't need this spawner. So what we're going to do is destroy actor if this is false. And if it's not false, we're just going to do a return. With our return, we're going to have one return value here, which is B spawner is valid. And in this case, it's true, but down here it's false. Even though we've destroyed it, we're doing this just as a check. If we need to destroy it again, we can talk about how to do that. So the first thing we're going to do after this is we're going to do another function called start spawner. So start spawner. We're going to have one input here, which is B spawner is valid. Sorry, I thought I had marked that as true for some reason. We're going to put a branch in here. And then we are going to do a get reference to self. And we're going to do another is valid check with the question mark. So if we are valid, but the spawner for some reason isn't valid, in other words, the actor itself hasn't been destroyed, and we're not valid, then we're going to do another destroy actor. And this is a double check that the actor is still alive. If so, destroy. We only do that if it is not a valid spawner. So we are checking if the array to spawn in has elements. If it does, the spawner is valid. If not, delete spawner. So that's all we're doing. Again, we're making that second check here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a nested loop system. So we're going to have an outer loop first. So we're going to do a for each loop. There we go. And we're going to do a for each loop based on each element we have in here. So this is our outer or slower loop. So let's just count this out as outer loop, which is the slower loop. And as I mentioned in the prep video, a slower loop only goes through each item once whatever the inner loop is doing has gone through all its items. And that's actually the next thing we have to do, which is our spawn resources. So let's do our spawn resources function. Now really quickly, I'm going to start categorizing these as master, because these are the 3 master functions that run everything. there will be a whole bunch of other functions we need to do. Now, I am going to give you a quick preview of what the main function kind of looks like, so that you understand that when I say we have a lot to do, I do mean we have a lot to do. So let me just bring this over here. Here is the old version of it. We had to do this twice, by the way, in the last version of this recording. There are a number of functions embedded in this. I know it looks like spaghetti. It really is. There's also a nice little racetrack in the center there. But it's a lot of work. And for that reason, this is a point where I think we need to pause. We're 20 minutes in. Doing that is going to take another 20 minutes. So that said, we're going to pause here. We're halfway through doing our custom spawner. And because we're doing things differently than my original recording, we're going to have a lot more time to actually talk about the other spawners that we can use and explore our options with some built-in tools. I'm going to also delete that resource spawner. All right, that said, I know this has been a relatively simple video and we haven't done all that much, but there is a lot to do in the next part of this. This video and this series have been brought to you by my Patreon sponsors like 1Vault10, Galois, Rian, Hanas, Quad Menson, and Connor. If you've enjoyed this series, make sure to hit that like button down below. And if you want to be here when we work on the rest of the spawner, make sure to hit the subscribe and notify icon. If you want a copy of this project, consider becoming a Patreon supporter. While it helps the channel out and you're helping me create more content, it also means that upper tiers you can get instant access to all ongoing and completed YouTube projects for which there are still version control copies left. And at other tiers, you can get copies of projects once the series has completed. And also consider joining our Discord community. All of that said, I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.